The gear side is terrified of clipping and full black shadows.
Andy Serkis just made a comment that made me like rub my temples.
As much as they may love art, nobody wants to lose their investment.
It's Helen, who is hardly in the Odyssey at all.
Why are we shooting the entire film on IMAX? I don't see the need for an ultra-wide lens.
If it's good, I like it, and if it's bad, I don't. At long last, after months of discussing this.
Yeah, seriously. All right. Moving this stuff slightly out of the way. I'm glad I brought my...
Yeah, the camera, that's very on-brand coffee mug. Your coffee mug game is unmatched. I've noticed that about you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's not... All mugs that I do have that are fun are all gifts.
Okay.
So
you don't like go out and seek out like
no,
I got out of the collection here.
It comes to me as a result of the universe telling me that I need to make movies, which I have not done yet. But yeah, speaking of movies, we have not decided what movie we're going to talk about for this first episode yet. We've thrown around some ideas. We were talking about Cliffhanger before we started this. What do we want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, what I was gonna say was on the topic of Young Washington being in theaters right now, Angel Studios was really interesting because previously the like Christian faith-based industry was like a cottage industry that was like adjacent to Hollywood. You'd occasionally get bullied in when somebody like Kevin Sorbo or whoever was like, or Dennis Quaid was like, I want to do this like little passion project because I'm religious or whatever. But in general, like there were these specific, it was off to the side. Angel Studios was like, hang on, why don't we just go get directors and actors from the same pipeline and do everything in more or less the way the rest of the industry does. And that's why you have Sound of Freedom has, well, that's not a good example, but you have like Young Washington has Andy Serkis, and the new one on Reagan is going to have Jared Harris and Jeff Daniels and J.K. Simmons.
That one I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I think that should be interesting. The one on Bonhoeffer had some notable names in it too. And so that was like an exciting, okay, so maybe these are actually going to turn out to be good. And there was, at least production value-wise, a market improvement when they came on the scene. But that hasn't really like translated to like a much more critical acclaim than there was. I mean, they're getting reported on in the trades more, which I guess is more visibility than like the Kendrick brothers had. But it's... And some of this was like Sound of Freedom was mired in so much controversy because
it was such that's the thing is like not only was it a particularly political film and controversial as a result of the content, but it was also the people who made it that had their own controversies that came about after the film was made. So the whole thing, you know, soup to nuts, became like untouchable. Right. Whereas if the Lorelodge video didn't do well on it.
Yeah. Whereas if that had been like their second or third feature theatrically, like
realistically, I think it was probably a good thing that was their first because they got all the big mistakes out of the way with the first one.
Yeah,
because the thing is, like, I have not seen any of their work since that. Largely because I'm a horrible film major and I rarely watch new movies, other than Project Hail Mary recently, which was amazing. Yeah, maybe we can talk about that at some point in the not too distant future. But yeah, I think it's an interesting case where. And I wonder your thoughts on this, because as you were talking and describing kind of how they've grown, the instinct came into my mind was, do you think as a result of how politically divisive the country has become, while also being large populations on either side, that people who were traditionally exclusively with Hollywood for like actors and producers and things like that, are starting to recognize that if they essentially play both sides of the coin in terms of Hollywood films and films like Angel Studios, they are now branching out to two very different but equally sized audiences.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think I think there is something to that because you take a look at Andy Serkis. He's doing the follow-up to the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies. And with Peter Jackson producing and Philippa Boyens and Fran Walsh, they're all the same people at the top, but Andy Serkis is directing. And I think he realizes, I would not be surprised if he realizes that's an IP that has two very different sectors that come from, different ideological backgrounds that are all really big into Tolkien. Rings of Power obviously was super controversial. So the Peter Jackson animated, were you even conscious that was, I'm curious, were you conscious that there was an animated Tolkien movie produced by Peter Jackson in theaters?
Had no clue.
Yeah, so it was actually really good. It was called The Hunt for the Rohirrim, and it was from a
When did this happen?
2024.
Okay.
It was it's set some time back in the history of Rohan before the Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
And it was in this anime type inspired style. It was good. But they didn't spend anything on marketing, and it did not do well at all. So it's a tough IP to be working with, to say, oh, we're gonna do this big, this big blockbuster that's a prequel. It's gonna have new cast. Jamie Dornan is playing Aragorn. But anyway, so I would not be surprised if he recognizes he's coming into a situation that doesn't guarantee a lot of returns.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, well, all right, there are going to be people that are just going to show up just because it's Tolkien, but if I can go over to Angel Studios and do this, seemingly pretty patriotic kind of, I haven't seen it, but patriotic thing that's targeted towards more conservative audiences, that might be a way that some people might see him in that and go oh, Andy Serkis, okay, he does some good stuff, does some good American values, whatever.
Yeah,
it's I trust him with Tolkien in a way that they might be on the fence about him. So I wouldn't surprise me if that's a part of the.
I do wonder, as a result of that, how the politics of Lord of the Rings fans skews.
Yeah,
because it's, obviously, for people who know Tolkien,
mm-hmm.
Especially I'm thinking of Mattis, who's very adamant about the fact that Tolkien's work is very Christian, particularly Catholic. And when you think about the type of people that are usually pretty Catholic or pretty, focused in on that, you're not necessarily going to lean one direction.
Yeah.
You're going to lean towards the other. That being said, we have people like Colbert who are proud Democrats who are also proud Catholics.
What's his name? Don Marshall, you've had on the Lord Lads podcast.
Yeah.
For example, his audience is very left skewing, but massive Tolkien nuts.
Yeah.
And so, I'd be interested to know, if there could be some sort of study or something, then, what is the exact, how does that balance out exactly?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's tough. Andy Serkis just made a comment that made me rub my temples, because he got asked some sort of question about the diversity of his upcoming Lord of the Rings project, and he should have just not answered that question for PR reasons. But he basically was like, well, if you look at, Tolkien was really inspired by Norse mythology, and that means it's going to end up being pretty white. And I was like, dude, why would you say that? You're not wrong in the sense that Tolkien is very clear about the fact he is writing a fictional past for the European continent.
Yeah.
That's not objectively wrong, but why would you say it? So that's okay, you're gonna please some people with that comment, but there are a lot of people that are oh, I'm not watching this now.
Yeah, well, especially in the current political climate. Exactly. I think it's interesting because obviously there are a lot of people who were upset about things like Rings of Power and stuff like that. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a big Tolkien person. I've seen the movies. I've not read the books. I've not watched a lot about them. I've only watched the movies twice through. Mm. I like them, but I did not grow up with them. Yeah. For a lot of people, what Lord of the Rings was for them, Star Wars and Indiana Jones were for me. So it's just, two sides of the same coin. My impression of that, I've not seen or heard his comments, but it would be, I think he did his best to answer it, because it's a weird situation where if you don't answer that, people will then project as much negativity as they possibly can or want to onto your lack of answering it. Yeah, so I think in his mind, he was probably looking at it from the position of, if I don't answer this, they're going to think I'm full of hate, so I need to say something. Yeah. So I can appreciate where he was coming from, especially when we live in a time where diversity is more important than it used to be. For sure. I think there are points where that is very good. I think we are getting a lot of representation that we didn't have. I think that's great. I also think it's not unwarranted. I think there are a lot of people who don't hate me for this, but I think there are a lot of people who don't like it for reasons that are out of touch, in the sense of there are the really negative reasons, but there's also the reason that our makeup as a nation is more diverse now than it was 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
And you can have your feelings about that one way or the other.
I mean, the makeup of the UK is different than it was when Tolkien was alive.
And so
very different.
And so the reality of the situation is, in the movie business, you are appealing to an audience.
Mm-hmm.
If your audience has changed, your product must change to fit that audience.
Absolutely.
Now, there are people out there who don't like that because they don't like the fact that the audience has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Grow up. There are also people that don't recognize that change has happened.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting the people that ascribe a sort of agenda behind that. Oh, that there's a diversity agenda or something in Hollywood. And the fact
They
is
just
that
want to make money, guys.
they just want to make money. And the fact is that if you are a writer who is tasked with, all right, I need to find a way into this thing. I need to, okay, here's the works of Tolkien. Figure out how to work in that as yourself in a way that feels authentic to you, whoever they're handing it to write the script. You're going to write something that is in some way, even if you're not pure, like write what you know, and you're pulling direct life experiences out, which doesn't really work for fantasy. But like if you're just trying to think of something that's authentic to you and the things that matter to you, that's going to be reflective of who you are. As the hiring of who's getting the jobs, who is going out into Hollywood and fighting for these jobs changes, as that makeup changes, you're going to have a broader set of life experiences that inform that. And how do they decide what writers to hire? It's the people that are reflective of the median ticket buying audience.
Yeah, well, it's also that you do have to recognize that, like, especially when it comes to story or portrayal in relation to screenwriters and actors, and even like directors and some members of production and stuff like that, we are all individual human beings with individual life experiences, and there are different life experiences depending on where you grew up and how you were raised, and unfortunately, other elements of who you are as a person that you can't control.
Right.
In order to accurately and honestly tell a specific story, you can be a really good writer and just fully comprehend something with a lot of research. But sometimes it's a lot easier to just write what you know and come from that background of understanding about that given topic. There are a lot of topics that's not required for. If your topic is a fantasy film... If your topic is a fantasy film about a world that you've created, you do not need a specific life experience in order to inform that. But if you're focusing on a specific life experience for your film, it would help if you've lived that experience to some degree so you can honestly portray it.
Because some things are environmental and atmospheric. Some things you're not just going to learn about a community or environment just by studying it.
Yes.
Like... I could write a pretty off the dome, write a pretty authentic movie about like life in Scranton, Pennsylvania, my hometown. I could spend weeks in the library reading about the history and the culture of Washington Heights. I could never write in the Heights the way that Lin-Manuel Miranda, who grew up there, wrote about it because I'm not Dominican. I've never lived in New York City. I don't know. Like, whereas he has decades of his life that he can draw upon for that, and there are things that are subconscious and intuitive about that.
Oh, it's the thing is, like, even just little, like, set deck details.
Yeah.
You know, he can, without having to do the research, tell that department, hey, that doesn't belong here, or hey, we need this. And it's not because he had to proactively go and figure that out ahead of time. It's because since he lived in it, he can make that decision instinctually on the fly in the moment, which realistically is also more cost effective. It
is, absolutely. And it's not really reflective of like race either. Like, I think everybody gets hung up on just the race thing. So many people are hung up on Lupita Nyong'o's casting in the Odyssey, even though it's Helen who is hardly in the Odyssey at all.
So I'm curious. We have not seen it yet. I can't remember when we're going to have this come out. It might be this coming Monday.
Yeah, it's Thursday night where we'll see it.
Yeah. So we're going to have...
when does this episode release? We will have seen the Odyssey by the time this comes out.
Yeah. But, so what intrigues me is I have tried not to follow the discourse about the Odyssey online for the most part as a result of the fact that I've looked at most of what has come across my feed and said, it's a fantasy, shut up. Yeah. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on what it's going to be?
Yeah, I think the thing about the Odyssey is it is fundamentally myth and fantasy. Like, yes, there was a real Troy. Mattis is fond of bringing up Heinrich Schliemann, who was an archaeologist that went and discovered, had the groundbreaking discovery, like, no, this was a real place where there was some kind of warfare. That doesn't mean that Achilles was a real guy. That doesn't mean Odysseus was a real guy. That doesn't mean Agamemnon was a real guy. It just means that there was some conflict that happened here that likely inspired people to make up stories about it. So it would be one thing if a director, I think Robert Eggers, this is right up his alley if he were to do it, there's an open niche for somebody to go and do, all right, I'm going to do the real version of, like, what do I think this could have really been at Troy? Mm-hmm. And I think I would watch that movie. I don't think that movie deserves the kind of budgets that Christopher Nolan can get.
Well, do you think so? Two things. One, do you think that is what the intent was of the film Troy in 2004?
No.
Considering the gods weren't really involved?
Well, I think that may have been part of it, because that movie was coming out at a time in which, like, demythologizing stuff was a trend. Batman Begins, Casino Royale, like, let's pull things down to earth more. Mm-hmm. So I think that was more why they did that. That movie's not historically or mythically accurate.
No.
That's not to say it's like a completely unwatchable movie. We had fun watching most of it, but it annoys me when people are like, well, this was we used to have this as Helen, and now we've got Lupita Nyong'o. It's like, well, yeah, Diane Kruger's not any more Greek than
that was just
Lupita
what I was about
Nyong'o
to say. It was
is.
Like, wasn't she blonde-haired and blue-eyed?
Yeah,
like
she's German. Like,
yeah, that's as close to being the original Greek as Lupita Nyong'o.
Exactly, which is like, I thought Diane Kruger did a great job. I think she's a super underrated actress. It's hard for me to hear you say, well, this is nothing compared to Diane Kruger, with me looking at, why is it nothing compared to that?
Yeah,
why
exactly.
Do you think that?
Yeah.
Same thing with Brad Pitt as Achilles. Like, yeah, he had the aura of, like, larger than life hero. He wasn't he was not Greek. He wasn't as effeminate as Achilles is canonically in the Iliad. They talk about how he could be easily mistaken for a maiden.
Hang on. So this is where a little bit of my ignorance is going to show, because I had intended to read the Iliad and the Odyssey before all of this came out. What you're telling me is that people are upset about the casting of Achilles, despite not knowing that is about as accurate of a description of Achilles from the Iliad as you can get.
Yeah, that was why that rumor intrigued me. I believe it has been confirmed that Elliot Page is playing a member of Odysseus' crew.
Okay.
Not Achilles.
Okay.
But when that rumor came onto my Twitter feed, I was very intrigued for that exact reason.
So that's the thing, is all I have seen is Elliot Page as Achilles, and Elliot Page is the wrong casting for Achilles. That's all I've seen about the movie, other than the armor and the ships.
Well, that's the thing, is that there is a point in the story of, and I'm always hazy, the Iliad is not the whole story of the war. Like, it's mainly focused on the Agamemnon-Achilles conflict.
Yeah.
There are other epics and other works that fill in the gaps. So I don't want to say this is in the Iliad because I don't know, but one of the parts of the myth is Achilles gets fed up with Agamemnon and with that whole fight, and he screws off. He says, I'm not fighting for you anymore. And then Odysseus has to go, like, find him because they can't win the war without him. Mm-hmm. And where Odysseus finds him is that he's impersonating a woman as his disguise so that they don't find him. And Odysseus has to use his cunning to, like, trick him into revealing himself. So that was when that rumor came. I saw that, I was like, oh, that's interesting, Nolan. Like, that's a fascinating, like, kind of, I guess, metacast a little bit. So I wouldn't have been mad if that was true, just because I think it's like out there, but not as out there as it sounds once you kind of think about the connotations of this guy. Achilles isn't supposed to be the big masculine, like, the alpha male hero of the Iliad is much more Ajax.
Okay.
That's the guy that is kind of like, they treat him as the conventional, Hercules, Sir Gawain type buff dude. Achilles is much more fair and lithe is kind of the image of him. But yeah, I think that the thing with Lupita Nyong'o, though, is, like, my position on changing the race of characters is If it's good, I like it, and if it's bad, I don't. I really like Jason Momoa's Aquaman. I remember when the casting was announced that the Khal Drogo actor is playing Aquaman. I remember people going like, "Wait a minute, he's supposed to be blonde. He has cropped hair. He's got." I was like, and then I went to see it, like the Batman vs Superman, and then Aquaman and everything, and he killed it.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. Even before I saw the movie, I was like, this makes so much more sense for Aquaman.
Yeah.
Like this as a characterization, to me, I feel is more appropriate.
Oh, him being an islander
yes.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
I'm like, yes, let's make Atlantis something like, what he would represent, rather than some weird Aryan-looking dude who lives at the bottom of the ocean. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, and that was amazing, right? But there are other examples where they flip the race and it doesn't work, right? It comes down to me is like, are they gonna do such an undeniable job in this role that I'm gonna just not think about it?
Yeah.
And the thing about Lupita Nyong'o is she's an Academy Award-winning actress.
Yeah.
She and also if they go the route that her and Clytemnestra are gonna be identical twins, she has given, I would argue, the best female dual role performance of all time in Us, Jordan Peele's film.
Still haven't seen it.
Yeah. Basically, the notion of that is she's a kid. They're on some sort of boardwalk somewhere, and she wanders off from her parents and goes into this fun house and sees a girl that looks exactly like her. And it's this weird doppelganger, and then she runs out and goes back to her parents. And then it jumps to when she's an adult. She's now played by Lupita Nyong'o, and then that doppelganger comes back after her, essentially. And she plays both, and is such a good thriller, and she does an amazing job. So if I'm Nolan, and I'm like, all right, well, I've got these two female roles that are very briefly in the Odyssey story, but need to eat their scenes up. Well, all right, I've got the actress who's done an all-time dual role performance. Why not just use her?
Yeah.
And she'll, regardless of what you think about Helen, like she will do a great job as Clytemnestra. I don't know if you're familiar with what her role in this.
I'm not.
Is. This is a spoiler for an epic poem that's been around for a very long time. So, basically, again, I don't think this is in. Again, I'm fuzzy. I haven't read them since high school, so I'm fuzzy on what's in which installment, I guess. But anyway. So you have Agamemnon, who is the brother of Menelaus. He's one of the military leaders. He's kind of the military leader. Like Menelaus kind of defers to him for most of the story. But anyway, he's the commander of the Greeks, and he before on the eve of the first battle of the war, he sacrifices his daughter Iphigenia to the gods, and his wife back home is not happy about that. And so she, with her lover, basically schemes against him. And when Agamemnon returns triumphant from war, she and her lover they basically just murder him when he gets home. And I think he's in the bath or something. Like there's some scene where he's like vulnerable, but he's after his victory parade and everything, and they get him. So playing that scheming, vengeful wife is. I think she'll nail it. And then Helen is okay. Maybe she'll nail Helen too. But that role specifically, I think she's great for.
You know what this makes me think of?
What?
Who did Troy? I can't.
Wolfgang Peterson.
Okay. Do you think Wolfgang had an idea to do an Odyssey after Troy if it would have been successful?
That's a good question. He certainly could have, because I think Sean Bean would have led that movie well. But it's hard to do the Odyssey without the mythological elements, though. Because the reason why even if you take everything that
look at Oh Brother Where Art Thou.
Well, but you have to strip so much out of it. But the thing, even if you were to say all the different things he encounters are just forces of nature and not monsters or divine, like the thing that sets off why all that happens to him is that he pissed off Poseidon. So you have to kind of figure out a new inciting incident for you to be able to justify why it takes 20 years to get across half the Mediterranean, if that. So I don't know. I don't think it would have been. It would have had to have just been a very different story, to the point where he probably spends he probably spends most of that story like on an island. Like he's probably on a desert island doing like Robinson Crusoe shit.
Where does he start?
Troy is in what is now Turkey.
Turkey, and he's getting back home to Greece?
Yes. Again, for that to take well, it's not 20 years, sorry, it's 10 years for the Iliad, 10 years for the Odyssey. For that to take 10 years, and you're not allowed to explain it as the gods are stopping him.
Was he on like an island of Greece?
Ithaca, specifically, which to be fair is on kind of the far side from Turkey, but that's still not like.
Yeah.
That's not a.
I gotta look at a map. I'm curious. I had an idea.
So, but I think you could do a version of the story where the original shipwreck happens, his crew all dies. He does like Robinson Crusoe type things. He's surviving on this island by himself. And he has hallucinations of Calypso, like he hallucinates a companion for himself, but she's not really an actual nymph or whatever it is that Calypso is in the myth. And then he has to figure out, okay, I'm on this desert island. I don't want to die here. How am I gonna like build my own craft? How am I gonna do this to hop across the islands?
Was there a reason he didn't go like the land route in the Odyssey? Did he try that?
I don't remember.
I'm curious.
I think because they were such a maritime civilization, I think that's definitely the most efficient route for them to have started the war from.
Oh yeah.
And so then I think.
But did he know he pissed off Poseidon?
Yeah, because he stops at the island that Polyphemus, the Cyclops, is, and he stabs the Cyclops' eye out. Well, he tricks him into thinking that they're sheep for him to let the sailors out of the cave, and he stabs the Cyclops' eye out, and so that Cyclops is Poseidon's son. And so Poseidon's like, screw you, and causes the rest of their voyage to suck.
Got it.
And then
so they were already on the water by the time they pissed off Poseidon. Got it. Okay.
The other, and that's why one of the reasons why Athena ends up, kind of like helping him at a certain point is because Athena and Poseidon traditionally were enemies.
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think it's cool. I think it's cool that Nolan's doing it his way. I think that him making decisions that are more aesthetically designed, like with the armor and such, more for aesthetic purposes than accuracy purposes, I think that is better for the scale of what he's doing.
Agreed. What do you think about the whole like Viking ship thing?
I mean, again, it's hard for me to like be mad that because it is fantasy. I
think that was a budget decision.
It may well have been.
Considering, did you see? I saw a clip of him. I think it was on Jon Stewart's show, where he was discussing the fact that the only reason he could have done the Odyssey was because Oppenheimer did as well as it did.
Yeah.
And that he was kind of even struggling to kind of get it through, even as a result of how well Oppenheimer did. And I think it's an important note to remember that like. Even the most successful people in the business, even the guy, because he's the head of the DGA, isn't he?
Yes, he's the president of the DGA.
Yeah. And so, like, even the head of the DGA, the guy who made Interstellar, Inception, the Batman trilogy, like Oppenheimer, all of these different things, still has to appease the money holders at the studios and be like, hey, this will make money. Because at the end of the day, you can make a really awesome, phenomenal, groundbreaking film. But if it doesn't at least cover its budget, ideally make a significant profit, you're not going to get to make any more movies after that.
Exactly.
Because for the people in the business, as much as they may love art, nobody wants to lose their investment.
Right. And if you're the guy in the middle that's not the guy with the money, but you're the producer at Universal that's assigned to oversee this project, it's not going to be your pocket that gets hurt, but you're probably going to be out of a job if you consistently deliver like under budget movies that don't make their budget back.
Yeah.
Like that's just, even if they really want to fight for and they really believe in this director or this vision, they like their jobs better, which is understandable. So that kind of goes to my point of if this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to have this scale of the Odyssey, I'd rather he focus on just making it as epic of a movie as possible.
Well,
and then if you want to do the, like, really...
Go ahead.
Well, just if you really want to do that, like, really stick to as close to the archaeological evidence of Troy as you can.
Yeah.
Do that movie, but I'd rather somebody like Eggers who can justify maybe a $50 million budget instead of a $250 million budget. I'd rather... And Eggers is better at that anyway.
Yeah.
Like, that's his skill set. So I'd rather that be the case rather than, we get once in a lifetime to do 250 mil for the Odyssey. It's not going to be cool because we're so obsessed with the stupid looking armor.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I'm so curious about is, and I respect his ability to reinvigorate certain elements of the technical portions of the industry in order to keep them preserved and move them forward.
Yeah.
That being said, why are we shooting the entire film on IMAX?
Because we can.
Right.
Because that's the thing is it's never been done before because they never had quiet enough IMAX cameras.
How much of the budget went to that?
That's a good question.
Look, I get it.
Yeah.
It's cool. It is very cool. It was innovative to make the blimp. At the same time, could have done Panavision 65. Could have done...
Well, I mean, VistaVision's coming back now with The Brutalist and One Battle After Another. He could have done that.
Could have done VistaVision. There are equally as interesting but less expensive means of doing this, and I understand, like, IMAX is big, and the resolution is great.
Well, it's gotten so mainstream now that people will get really hyped about... Like, a big part of why Sinners was so successful was... they
right. I'm an idiot. It's a marketing thing.
They had the marketing around like Ryan Coogler explaining the different aspect ratios and what makes them different. Letterboxd has this thing now where
you notice there's a lot of movies that are now changing their aspect ratios throughout the film. Like that's becoming a trend.
It's not as bad as it used to be when Michael Bay was shot to shot changing it.
Yeah, but that wasn't. I think that was Bay just doing Bay things.
Yeah.
Now it's becoming like. Because Sinners did it, Project Hail Mary did it, like
The Last Mission Impossible did it when
like,
which he did it in a cool way where he like as he turns the. Did you see that movie? The final, no. In the Final Reckoning, there's how they do the aspect ratio changes. It's during the set piece where Tom Cruise is in the submarine.
Yeah,
and he turns the door to let the water in, and as he turns it, at each crank, the aspect ratio expands a little bit. And
That's
so by
fun.
the time he gets all the way done with the rotation, it's at its full extension. So stuff like that, I think that I think is fine. I think that's cool. The way it happened in Oppenheimer, where the opening of the establishing shots, and then once it went into dialogue, it switched. Like at least that's a consistent rule that I can follow.
Yeah.
Where it annoys me is when it's haphazard.
Yeah, well, it's a haphazard, but it's also. It's starting to feel gimmicky for me. And it's starting to feel like more of a marketing ploy than an artistic decision.
But you're not going to have that happen in the Odyssey because it's all on IMAX.
Right. Which, but again, also feels like a marketing thing because it's like, hey, go to the theater, watch this in IMAX because it was shot in IMAX for IMAX.
You know what Letterboxd does for some movies now is that they did this for One Battle After Another and they're doing it for the Odyssey. A checklist where you can see it in every format that's available or whatever. So it is a marketing thing, but so there's you could look at that cynically, but I also think that because I agree it does feel like was this really worth the money? But I think we're gonna watch it on Thursday and we're gonna get out of the theater and be like, that was awesome.
Oh no, I definitely want to see it in IMAX.
I'm glad they did that.
I just we're gonna be there are certain choices that intrigue me by different filmmakers, and I'm not negating it because everybody wants to do different things. Like for me, I've been, unreasonably wanting, I have wanted to shoot on an Alexa for over a decade since I heard of it.
Right.
Because I was like, this is the holy grail of cameras, and I want to get my hands on it, and I want to shoot everything on it. I can imagine that, for Nolan, IMAX is a little bit in that same thing, or for other filmmakers, Tarantino or somebody, that 65 millimeter is that kind of a thing. And, just shooting on film is that kind of a thing for other people. I would love to shoot on 35 millimeter at some point when I can justify the expenditure. I can't right now, very much so. But I get it. I get that people have their proclivities to different things, and they want to do those different things as much as they possibly can because A, it's kind of their thing, and B, it's fulfilling that desire, that childhood need to want to make the kind of film that you grew up watching or that you always dreamed of making. Fully understand it. I'm being reminded right now of two films. One is Five Nights at Freddy's,
Okay.
and the other is Superman.
All right. I've seen Superman. I've not seen Five Nights at Freddy's.
So I did both of those films for Silver Retention videos. If you haven't seen it, check it out. That's the companion channel to this podcast. Anyway, for Five Nights at Freddy's, they shot on an Alexa 65 with like ultra wide lenses.
Yep.
And on Superman, they shot on the Red V Raptor 8K with the Leisha 16-21. And it was like a it's a weird lens. It's a photography lens. It's not a zoom lens. It has 3 native focal lengths.
Right.
And it's supposed to be used on one of those 3 native focal lengths. And I understand that there's kind of a little bit of a pushback from the trend in like the late 90s to early 2010s, where everything was shot on long focal lengths, shallow depth of field, like, you know, everything was, especially action stuff where you could barely see anything with the shaky cam, all that. But I'm intrigued as to why we're doing ultra-wide sensors and ultra-wide lenses paired with those sensors.
Yeah.
I understand part of that is being able to have the camera right in the middle of the action. For certain elements of a film, that I get it, that makes sense. Also, for shooting on location, I can certainly understand that because you can get a lot of a frame, or a lot of a location in frame in a small location.
Exactly.
That does make sense to me as well. For something like the apartment argument scene in Superman, where we're in a set, we're having a conversation.
Yep.
I don't see the need for an ultra-wide lens.
No, and where it really irritated me in Superman was the flying.
Yeah,
Where
I don't
you're
like
right
that
up
whole
in
flying.
his face.
Yeah.
With the ultra wide, and it looks so dumb.
Well, it's
was like
it's unflattering to the actor.
it's unflattering, yeah, because all the fish-eyeing, it's just nonstop fish-eyeing throughout that movie.
I do understand that a wide lens will then create a greater sense of movement and scale
right.
in that atmosphere. You're going to have, in those flying scenes, the background is going to be moving much faster
Right.
the wider of a lens you go.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that we're creating a super being that can fly at like Mach 1,000.
Yeah.
We can do that digitally. We can show that speed even at like 35 mil
Especially
or
because
40
they
mil.
weren't they rear projecting the flying scenes anyway?
They did rear projection for the flying sequences, but not for the actual background. It was purely for volumetric lighting. They replaced that background after the fact
Right.
with full digital backgrounds, so that way it was a little bit more seamless. Because one of the biggest problems with the volumes right now is
so two-dimensional.
Well, it's partially the two-dimensionality, and it's partially that trying to compensate for the pixels. Because sometimes you get, with frame rates and with shutter angles and all of that different stuff, you get pixel flutter or pixel flicker. Or like it's kind of like if you've ever taken a smartphone and you've tried to take a picture of your or a computer screen.
Oh yeah, how it gets all
and you get all that weird artifacting. You're kind of getting some of the same problems with the volumes.
Got it.
To my understanding, some of them don't have it. Some of them do.
So then what? But there are other pre-volume wall, like the rear projection shots and eyes wide shut.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have that problem because it was all analog, I assume.
Right, but it's also the whole point of the volume wall now is you can get external dynamic and moving lighting for the situation you're in.
Right, because those shots where Tom Cruise is just walking, it's consistent street lighting.
Exactly.
The whole way.
But for something like a flying scene in Superman, he's flying at like 9,000 miles per hour. Everything around him is moving very rapidly.
Even to move the lights on a rig would be just a huge pain in the ass.
So you can use that for real-time volumetric lighting on the actor, and then you can replace that later on with a digital background to match.
Yeah.
But at least then, instead of having to worry about rigging a system to get lights moving really quickly around a person, you can just have a single wall, no moving parts, other than the projection on the wall, which is definitely, it's safer, it's easier, it's cheaper. I understand.
Yeah. So then but even more so than if it being all digital in the final movie, there's no reason you can't just have that move faster. Like, you don't necessarily need to do that, like, there's no reason to do it in camera if you're not actually going to use the thing that's in camera for the edit. Like, you could just have Superman whichever way you think looks best in the lens. If you're just going to roto him out and put a digital background in. Yeah. Henry Brown's just, his whole style with that there's a lot of it in The Flash too, which I haven't seen all of, but there's a lot of just the, like, weird fisheyeing around Ezra Miller's face and just, like, strange characteristics to the image that don't really add anything other than just making it look surreal and out of, like, not even really surreal, just making it look fake.
Yeah, and it's a style, and I can appreciate it. Like, he has his thing. But I think I have different preferences.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to see some of the things that we've seen recently in a slightly different format. Like, going back to Five Nights at Freddy's, despite it being an ultra-wide sensor and an ultra-wide lens, I think it still looks relatively normal and good and stuff like that or whatever. Like, it's not distorted.
Right.
But it is an interesting trend in my mind. There's another interesting trend that I think I haven't heard anybody talk about this. Somebody might have. I discussed the whole Netflix lighting thing at one point, but I can't remember if I actually mentioned this in that video. I don't think it's just the lighting. It is, but I think one of the elements that is now part of it is our obsession with dynamic range.
Okay.
For whatever reason, the gear side of filmmaking is terrified of clipping and full black shadows.
Right.
I don't know why. Because there are so many films that came out before the last 10 years that have clipping and full black shadows that look amazing. Yeah. Take, again, I'm going to Deacon's fanboy here for a second, but take something like Jarhead, where he intentionally clips almost the entire image with intent.
Yeah.
Does the same thing in Assassination of Jesse James. There are scenes where we're looking outside from an interior. The interior is properly exposed, but the outside is intentionally clipped. It can work.
Yeah. I mean, and the full black shadows in that movie are gorgeous.
Yes.
Like,
but that's the thing is the only thing that Deakins does is that, like, he will go right up to the line of full black because he likes there to be a separation between what's black on screen and the edge of a projected screen in a theater.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, he'll go almost full black. I have no problem going full black because I like the idea of the image kind of emerging from the wall in a sense. I find that interesting.
Well, it's immersive too.
It's immersive, yeah, exactly. And also considering most people are watching on home screens now.
Right.
To me, it looks better like that anyway.
Well, it's just the old school, like, Nolan does the same thing where he's like, I'm making this for the theater. If you watch it elsewhere, that's on you.
Yeah.
But this is a movie made for theater specifically, which I can respect.
Yeah, I can totally respect that. Yeah. And, I appreciate that immensely. I also, thinking about my own career that hasn't started yet with film, is the majority of whatever we are going to make in the next probably 10 years are going to be majority watched on screens at home.
Definitely.
Hopefully one day they'll be watched in theaters, and hopefully, like, even as theatrical releases ideally we have come out, that will be, at least some people will watch them in theaters, but realistically I'm imagining that, like, most people are going to watch it either on a phone, laptop, or a TV. Ideally, especially if it's in that proper aspect ratio, if you want to watch our films, the best. And I'm planning on potentially doing a video for this on the personal channel when I talk about gear. A 10-bit 21:9 monitor goes a long way, because I had an 8-bit one for a while. You're now using that for work, and now I have two 10-bit ones. And when you watch a scope film on a 21:9 monitor, whether it's 235 to 1, 239 to 1, even 221 to 1, it is a experience. It feels like you're watching it how it was intended to be watched. Yeah. The first time I watched anything, I think it was either Jaws or Master and Commander, I watched on that screen. And it starts playing because, if you're watching in VLC, you can crop the film to fit that, because that's the native aspect ratio. And when you watch a movie where it takes up the entire screen, there's just something, at least in the back of my mind, that fires neurons that I've never felt before. And it just feels right.
Well, and it lets you immerse yourself in the thing that a director does with composition and movement and editing, where the director's leading your eye somewhere. And a big enough screen like that lets you, I'm looking at that part of the screen, and now I'm looking at this part of the screen. Mm-hmm. If you're watching it on a laptop, for example, you've got it all in here with a lot of room on either side of your field of vision. You can't, you can kind of, but it's too small to really appreciate what it is when you are letting a director point your eye at something. So it's cool. We watched Dante's Peak on it together, and that was mind-blowing.
Yeah. Also, great movie. Something I do want to cover. I want to do, at some point in the next couple years on Silver Retention, I want to do a kind of like a double feature-esque kind of thing with Dante's Peak and Volcano, because I think that's a beautiful double feature. Mm-hmm. Definitely want to do something there, because I actually just had on the side, I was watching Dante's Peak again while I was doing other work for an hour yesterday, because it's just, I love the Cascades, and I love Pierce Brosnan, and I love movies where scientists do cool science things. Yeah. So it's like a perfect movie for me.
Yeah, two of my favorite character archetypes are a science person that accidentally ends up being an action hero. Mm-hmm. Indiana Jones is similar, where he's really a professor, and then he kind of winds up having to do action stuff. Yep. And the other one is people whose job it is not to solve murders, who end up, Hitchcock does this all the time, end up having to solve a murder because they're just the only one around who's going to do anything about it. Yep. It just you can do the same stock character over and over again. I will never get tired of it.
Yeah. No, agreed. And it's the 90s were a perfect time for that. Yeah. Because all of the technology, both in terms of filmmaking and in terms of technology as a whole, got interesting and good enough to where the quality was really solid of what you were making, but also it was pre-internet and everybody knows everything and has access to every piece of information, where for example, a movie like Dante's Peak now would have to be a different film, because a lot of the film is explaining to certain characters what exactly a certain thing is and what, how that works. Mm-hmm. But it's at a time where you can get away with half information in a film, or being very selective about what you are choosing to show, or time scales. Yeah. Now, granted, they had a lot of people on that film who were scientists who came on to make sure it was scientifically accurate. Mm-hmm. There are elements that are not, but every scientist, even now, on Reddit or whatever, that talks about the movie, they say the vast majority of the information is correct. The time scale is incredibly shrunken for how these things would happen and how long it would be in between events. But the series of events and the things that happen are mostly accurate, aside from one of the elements of lava, and that was really it, because the only really big inaccuracy was that there was a rapidly flowing lava river at a certain point in the film on a mountain that also pyroclastically exploded, because
those two things don't happen together.
Not only do they not happen together, but the makeup of the rock is different. Okay. For those two different events to occur. Mm-hmm. I think it's that a high silica content rock will flow like that, but a high silica content rock that would flow like that also does not build pressure and explode pyroclastically.
That would make sense.
Yeah. So there's that little inaccuracy. That's just a little bit of Hollywood trickery. But like, the CO2 problems, the sulfur in the water, the acid lake, the pyroclastic explosion, all of that is accurate to a Cascade volcano. It's just, instead of happening inside of 48 hours, it would happen over the course of several months.
Makes sense. With the specificity of like access to technical knowledge is something that like is a really like enjoyable artifact of that time. The one that sprang to mind as soon as you said that was the fact that the hero of Independence Day is like the phone company guy.
Yeah.
Because at that point, if something like that, well, I mean, phones, people don't even use the landlines in the same way that they did back in the 90s anyway. So so there's a layer of that couldn't even happen now.
Yeah.
But even if it did, you'd pretty easily be able to find a YouTube tutorial of how to fix your phone line, like just the phone lines running through the walls of your house, more or less. But the fact that like at that time, that was such unique knowledge to a specific kind of, you could say, tradesman, that like the federal government and the Department of Defense need that guy to fight an alien invasion off.
Yeah.
Like that, you can't replicate that in the post-internet world. And so it's fun to watch that like random autistic dude that they need to like save the world just because he like has this one specific job that nobody else can do.
Well, then I love the experience of science and technology people discovering things, especially in the 90s, because I love the aesthetic of computers and everything at that time. And also the fact that it was a weird blend between analog and digital. So you still had like things that were on paper that people could rip off and look at versus, whatever those sine wave things are that like analyze sound and stuff, like and whatever. But like, I don't know what class of movie this would be, but for me, I group them together. It's like Contact, Dante's Peak, Volcano, The Perfect Storm, Twister. They're like, they are disaster.
Those are all disaster movies.
Yeah, I guess. Well, because Contact's not really a disaster movie, but it has that scientific discovery element.
But I also think like a lot of political thrillers fall into that. Like, because there's a certain aesthetic to the technology of like The Hunt for Red October or something.
Yes.
That is similar to what you're describing, even though it's a totally different genre than all of those. It's just like we need to like come up with what the concept for this is, because this is so fascinating. Because it's like, it's not just like dad thrillers. Like that's a genre that's out there.
What is dad thriller?
Dad thrillers are like It's like the early Jack Ryan stuff.
Okay.
It's like those. Jason Bourne is kind of the end. The Fugitive. Jason Bourne is kind of like the end of it.
Okay.
Hunt for Red October is definitely on there. But it's just like these. It's exactly what you're describing of like about this very competent guy who's an everyman.
Yep.
Who, does all this extraordinary stuff, and it's the stuff that like Gen X dads were like, oh, this could be me if the fate of our country depended on my specific job.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's that, but I don't think there's a Venn diagram where there's overlap with those, but I don't think what you're describing is exactly that.
You know what this makes me think of? And this is something that I've thought of for a while that I don't really know how to put into words. I love when a film has a really beautiful aesthetic, a really beautiful specific aesthetic.
Yeah.
For example, like Blade Runner 2049 or anything like that.
Yeah.
I also love the exact opposite.
Okay.
I love when a film looks exactly like real life.
Really?
The Fugitive made me think of it. And films like that are like Jaws, The Fugitive, even stuff like Indiana Jones, really any of the earliest Spielberg.
So much of this.
So, and this is the thing, is like when you think about The Fugitive or Jaws, there's not really a color palette.
No.
The color palette in its entirety is natural lighting, and set design and costuming. Yeah. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But the set design and the costuming, they're not like you don't have a color palette for an individual character. Like, for example, Brody, he starts off in a tan, like, sheriff suit.
Yeah.
It's chosen because that's the color of a sheriff's suit.
Yeah.
And he wears a black t-shirt and jeans for most of the rest of the film.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like an evil person. That wasn't a thematic choice, as far as I'm aware.
Right.
That was maybe a character choice.
Yeah.
Similarly with Hooper, he's in blue denim most of the film.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be what the character
would wear.
Character would wear. Blue might be thematic because he works on the ocean, but not really.
No.
Also, Quint wears a blue denim shirt and a green M65 jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what he owns.
Like they don't really go together aesthetically. It's just like, this is what he would wear.
That's just what he would wear.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's a veteran who is kind of all consumed by the tragedy that he existed in when he was in the service.
Mm-hmm.
He's an ex-Navy guy, so he's wearing something that an ex-Navy guy who is still kind of partially mentally in the Navy would wear.
Yeah.
Everyone else in the film is just kind of, they're just wearing generic clothing that they might wear.
Yeah.
This is nothing against costume design that is very intentional, that has a very specific color palette for individual characters. But going even further, set design. The colors aren't really, again, thematic.
Right.
They are representative of what the town looked like, what a house in that town would look like. For the orca, it was a slight exaggeration of what that kind of a working boat would look like.
Yeah.
It was even at that point, a lot of the boats were already just pure white.
Mm.
So it was it was built to look like an anachronism even at the time.
Yeah. But I think though that like all of the above is still also an aesthetic choice, because I think the thing that movie is trying to accomplish is it's trying to seem so realistic that you're worried it could happen to you, and that was successful.
I agree.
Because of the response to sharks in real life because of that movie.
Yes.
Contrasted to something like a few years earlier, The Godfather, which is very aesthetically driven, where the lighting and the costuming and the sets are all very specific to a drama that isn't supposed to feel like real life. It's supposed to feel like Shakespeare.
Yes.
And
but even
so, like,
even there, though, the colors are still relative. Like, the lighting is more dramatic. It's
Yeah.
more low-key.
Yeah.
But the colors are still relatively normal.
Yeah. There isn't anything that doesn't feel like, you could walk down. You feel like you could walk down 1972 or 73 in New York City and see people wearing this.
Yes.
Like, that is true, too. But it's just interesting that, like...
But also even just the colors of, like, the backgrounds and the film itself.
Oh, sure, yes.
Like, that's also kind of what I'm leaning into, is, like, in terms of the general look of both Jaws and something like The Fugitive, which are separated by about 20 years.
Yeah.
The color timing, the adjustment, the post-processing
is not very, it's not in your face. You're not going to necessarily notice the color timing.
Borderline non-existent.
Yeah.
Borderline, it may have just been color correction rather than color timing.
Right. And I think it's interesting, like, because even in something that's more dramatic, like The Godfather, you do have that still, and it's an interesting trend of the 60s into the 70s where we were getting away from Technicolor. We were trying to have more, the storytelling was less about, you weren't controlled by the Hays Code anymore, so you could get grittier and more realistic and show...
What year did that finally fall apart? Was that 54 or 64?
No, 68.
68.
Same year as the Supreme Court case with Paramount ended vertical integration. So 68 was a big year of, like, upheaval.
Right.
And so, like, almost immediately you have stuff, like, in the very... you have... Easy Rider is right there. Bonnie and Clyde is right there. The Graduate's right there. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is right there. Like, almost, and those are not in chronological order by any means, but, like, almost right out of the gate in the late 60s. The Wild Bunch, I think, is right there. That might have been a little earlier. But yeah, no, they come right out of the gate with Midnight Cowboy, like, just fully going into let's show the side of reality that we were not allowed to show before, and let's show people in situations that don't fall into black and white cases of who's right and who's wrong. and along with that came the aesthetic change of, all right, well, now we can get a little a more lifelike, more naturalistic, and some of that was also the fact that like on location shooting was becoming a big thing for the first time. You were having to,
I did not realize the reason for that, and I think it was in. Did I cover this in? No.
You mentioned this in Taxi Driver.
No. It's so. It was because I was reading the book by Julia Phillips as a result of having done Taxi Driver. I did not realize just how big cameras used to be.
Yep.
I did not realize. Oh, no. It wasn't the Julia Phillips book. I was reading Masters of Light.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who it was that was talking about it, but it wasn't Bill Butler. It was somebody in I think it was chapter 2 or 3, but they were talking about, at the time, loving the improvements in camera design, because now they were only 45 pounds and you could actually put them on your shoulder and get in locations and also moving shots as opposed to locked off on a tripod, because cameras back when they were coming up were 135 pounds.
Yep.
They were the size of the IMAX blimp.
Just to get a
normal shot.
Yeah.
Which is wild, and I know part of the reason for that was because Technicolor was 3 strips of film.
Yep.
And so you had to have a massive camera in order to record something essentially 3 times over. Crazy how analog film progressed.
Absolutely. Well, what's one of the most interesting things that a lot of people don't think about is camera movement was restricted by how hard it was to get sound at first.
Yeah.
When Talkies started.
Sound of Music, or not Sound of Music. Singing in the Rain does a great.
Singing in the Rain does it really well. Babylon does it really well. I don't know if you've seen that film.
I have not yet.
That we should cover that on either here or on the Video Essay channel, or both, because such a well-made movie that was not appropriately rated at the time. But there's a scene where they just show Margot Robbie's character doing her first take of a scene that has audio, and she has to go again and again and again, because with the mics of the time you have to stand in the exact same spot. You cannot have, there's almost no ability to discern out types of sound you don't want to hear as much as others. It's insane. They cover this thing in the Rain, they cover it in Babylon, but in Babylon it's just it's very well edited, just for having to go again and again and again, how much of a pain in the ass it was. But it's interesting to see clips from some films from 1926 or whatever, right before, because there's camera movement that's characteristic of much smaller cameras and much more advanced abilities on set, because they didn't have to worry about that. And then as soon as Talkies came in 1927, they were very restricted, and it set camera movement capabilities back decades, just by having to then coordinate with the how hard it was to do sound.
I do want to take a second and go back to the color timing thing, because with movies like Jaws and also The Fugitive, it's very true to life. I think it's very interesting as well that I equally love things like Blade Runner 2049 and what I just thought of was Heat, which is, that's an interesting one because it's less the timing and it's more the lighting.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting delineation between, I would say, different styles, because part of what makes the non-augmented feel of Fugitive and Jaws interesting is the choice of lighting. And it's so interesting to me because at the time, they were shot on 5242 or 5247 Kodak.
Yep.
Daylight balanced, or either a daylight or tungsten. And all they're really using is tungsten, massive tungsten fixtures. Yep. And they're really just using that to fill.
Rods in.
Exactly, yeah. And they're really just using that as fill light, so that way they don't have excessive shadows on exterior shots. And I wonder it's despite it being essentially a horror movie, it's very high key.
Mm-hmm.
Like there really are not a lot of shadows in that film. It's actually quite bright, and part of that is because it's an adventure movie as much as it is a horror movie, especially
Jaws?
especially in the latter half of the film. And I'm intrigued by, we have that one story that we might do called We Went Camping.
Yeah.
And I have some ideas for that. And I'd be so intrigued about, at the very least, doing some camera tests for that kind of a style, but like doing an interesting blend of something like the style of cinematography for Jaws and the style of cinematography for something like, Heat, where it's very stylized. Because they're not just timing it; they had specific gels on specific lights, and they were trying to match and also augment existing lights by comparison with the sodium vapor lamps that were around LA all the time, at that time. But they also had that very specific teal color that they were looking for. It's just an interesting conversation to me, the idea of the spectrum of lighting and timing films and how different they can be and how similarly artistic they can feel, even when it's subtle and unintentional.
Yeah, I think that's Jaws and Heat are really good, a really good pair to contrast, because Heat, you have a lot of the stylistic choices of that movie are driven by what the genre is over what the actual environment is. Like, that movie represents LA, and like LA does not look like Heat.
No,
ever. Which is why I love it, because it is like, okay, this is a very dramatic cop movie that feels it has this like gothic sense to it in a certain way. And it's like, okay, Michael Mann goes like, that's gonna supersede for us the need for this to feel like an LA movie. And it feels like, and part of this has to do with the fact I think he's pulling from a Chicago story, and so it feels very Chicago, and that's a very cool contrast with the actual environment of LA that they're in. Whereas with Jaws, Spielberg's decision is not to make it feel like a horror adventure movie, is to make it feel like where the real place that they are in. And it still is in those genres, but it's just what takes precedence for him is making it feel like it's really happening. And that almost makes that movie, it's not right for every horror movie, but makes that movie even kind of scarier. Like the camping film, because that's the Wendigo one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, that's an example of something you could take that approach where it's like, I want to make people really scared to camp in the woods.
Yeah.
A Wendigo's going to get them.
Yeah.
Like, you could take that approach, and I think that's a smart way to do something like that. That is, like, it wouldn't work for Alien, because none of that is going to bleed into anybody's real life ever.
Yep.
Blair Witch Project is the same thing. That movie isn't a horror movie until the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But that's what makes those last 15 minutes freaking terrifying.
Yes.
Because you've just spent all this time being like, oh yeah, I'm really with these guys. They're camping. They're lost. They don't know what to do. They're getting pissed at each other. And then once the change happens, you're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, there are very specific style things that I have had in mind for We Went Camping, and I don't know if I want to share them because I don't want somebody to like take it and do it in their own film before we get the chance to. But
I'll ruin the surprise for when.
Exactly. But there are certain things that I would want to exist in the lead up to when it becomes a horror film versus when it actually becomes one. And there's a very specific thing that I really want to do that I don't think I've seen anyone do anywhere.
Yeah, tell me that off mic, because that'll be. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you right now, and then you can have your reaction be in the.
Okay.
The thing. Okay.
That sounds. You were absolutely right. The combination of those two things is not something I've ever seen before.
Okay.
I mean the first one is essentially like, I'm sure there are lots of films that just change that progressively or change it at certain points. Like I'm sure I could think of one if I just sat here, but that second one I've never seen somebody replicate. It's always fun when you can replicate real stuff that you see with your eyes in camera.
Yeah.
It's always impressive, and so that's one I've not seen before. So
we need to make movies, man.
We do. Help get this podcast monetized, and that will help us get our films done if that's something you want to see us do.
Large reason why we're doing this is because hopefully we can find people who want to watch cool movies and then give you cool movies to watch.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about color timing. We talked a little bit about cameras. We talked a little bit about set deck and costuming in different contexts. That was actually kind of our through line. I'm realizing now I'm retroactively deciding what we're going to title and call this episode, but I guess because we talked about it with modern movies, we talked about it with older movies. One, I don't know where I was going with that.
I thought the next part of that sentence was going to be saying we talked about past and present movies. What is the future of that thing? Or did you want to go even further into the past and talk about?
No. I think future makes sense because I was trying to essentially figure out. Okay, so we talked about all of these different things. How do we want to consolidate them into an overarching goal of all of the topics? And I think future makes sense for that.
Well, I think a good way to tie it all together and go towards future is the fact that I think part of the value of stuff like we're going to shoot a whole movie on IMAX for the first time is not just for the fulfillment of what the director has always wanted to do, or not just for the service that one specific movie. It brings the whole industry up.
I agree. I think the same thing for like VistaVision and stuff. And what was, what was the other one?
65.
No, was it?
Yeah, I think the two we brought up was you talking about the 65 millimeter.
Was VistaVision PTA for One Battle After Another?
Yeah, and then Brady Corbett did use it for The Brutalist.
Yes, somebody else used another weird format recently. I say weird. Somebody used something like VistaVision a couple years before they did that.
You're talking about, well...
It may have been just normal 65.
Yeah, because that's what...
Oh, I think I'm thinking of Tarantino using 65 for Hateful Eight.
Yeah. Did he also use it for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
I know it was a big thing when he did it for Hateful Eight.
Hateful Eight
the whole road show
would be a good silver attention video essay.
That's probably my favorite of his movies.
It's not necessarily one of my favorite of his movies, like story wise, but I love this like technical behind the scenes. Well, it just has a weird story, like the stuff with the script. So the script to the Hateful Eight was leaked in the hack at Sony from the North Koreans over that movie with Seth Rogen.
I completely forgot this whole thing happened.
So
my God.
Lots of stuff got leaked that changed a bunch of stuff in the industry. It was one of the factors behind Sony scrapping their plans to do more Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and pivoting to collaboration with Disney.
Oh.
There were other factors, like Kevin Feige kind of like was pressuring them to fire Andrew Garfield, and like there were other factors, but like that was one of the catalysts of things moving around at the Sony studio. But one of the things was it released the script of the Hateful Eight. I don't think it had been even greenlit yet. It was just like he had given them the script to be like, hey, this is what I'm kind of wanting to do. And so at first Tarantino was like, well, shit, everybody knows how my movie ends now. Like, why would I'm not gonna make it. But people who went online and read the leaks were like, oh, this is actually a really good script, and there started to be some traction behind it. And so he did this table read with these famous actors, and they got together and they read it. And he was like, you know what, this is actually cool. Worth doing. So we did some rewrites, and like that's how it kicked off. But there's so many of the roadshow thing you mentioned, like so many cool stories behind that movie. Them breaking the real guitar.
Oh, what?
Oh, you know, so they got this antique guitar from somebody that's a collector, whoever, or not, it was a collector, it was a company. I don't remember who, but they got this. It was they barely pulled it off. They got this really nice antique guitar. You would know if I could remember the brand and stuff. You would know exactly what I'm talking
Gibson
about.
Or
yeah, it was like one of these like
Martin.
Might have been Gibson. I don't know. You if once you look it up and what the guitar was, you'll know exactly why this is a big deal. But it was this like really nice old antique guitar that was like for the authenticity of the prop or whatever. And is it Kurt Russell who smashes the guitar?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so they had that guitar, and they had breakaway guitars for the scene. And Kurt Russell's in beast mode, and he picks up the prop guitar and breaks the hell out of it. And you can see on Jennifer Jason Leigh's face in the take, like, her shock not at the character doing that, but at Kurt Russell breaking a very expensive antique guitar. And so after that, the company that had that was like, yeah, we are never loaning guitars to film productions ever again. They released a public statement about it.
That is nuts.
It's a great story behind that movie. But anyway, where the format conversation I was going with that was. Like that's a glass ceiling of being able to do a like intimate dialogue scenes in IMAX that like now anybody can do it. Like Cameron's gonna do it.
Yeah.
Now other people are gonna be able to do it. Ryan Coogler might do it. Who knows if he keeps doing IMAX. And then the next barrier that they need to break will be the 3-hour time limit. Because the pans or whatever they call them, that the film, they can only hold so much film on them. You know, so one of these next directors, Nolan and Cameron are kind of the two. They're like, oh, hey, IMAX, you're gonna invent new stuff for me. Hey, you're gonna invent new technology for me.
I will say, I am surprised every time I look deeper into film productions how much that happens on a wide variety of productions with a wide variety of members of the production teams.
Do you have any idea how many patents the big Hollywood studios own?
No.
Like it's like tens, if not hundreds of thousands, I think, that Warner Brothers has, because they're always having to invent new stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is also like even for something like Bram with his camera rig. The handheld rig that he's using, I can't remember what it was called. It's not the Trinity. It's the
oh crap, what is
it? The Stabilize.
Yeah.
The Stabilize Nano.
Yeah.
They made that for him.
Mm-hmm.
And the Stabilize and Trinity rig was essentially made for 1917. Mm-hmm. Like they made a completely different version of it. Also, I'm fairly certain the Alexa Mini was made as a result of a request by Deakins. I could be wrong on that, but I know there are several times in Deakins' career where he's working with Ari in preparation for a film, and he's like, "Hey, I need this." Yeah. I think the Signature series was partially like the Ari Signature Lens series was partly as a result. It might be the Signatures or the Masters, but partly as a result of Deakins' necessities for a specific film.
Yeah, Cameron did it with the he's done it with camera stuff before, but he did it specifically with an Avatar: The Way of Water. He did it with the engine to simulate the underwater environment that the Na'vi are in.
Yes. I stand by it that James Cameron is only a filmmaker as a result as an excuse to be on the leading edge of technology.
Yeah, I absolutely, yeah.
His entire career has essentially just been, how can I advance technology?
Yeah, he's this paradoxical filmmaker for me where I don't really love any of his movies, but
the only one that I really love, because I haven't seen all of them, but the one I really love is Terminator 2: Judgment Day.
I've not seen all the Terminators, but yeah, like it's just I've never like been like, Titanic does not compel me as a story at all. I'm like, I don't enjoy these characters. I don't think this is particularly like that great of a movie, but I think he's a badass with the stuff that he did to make Avatar. Like, very simple movies. Like they're very formulaic stories with very like straightforward themes. No. But this, like, yeah, where he goes with, he almost has this like Edison or Tesla, or, you know, he has this inventor mindset almost.
Yeah.
That he just decides that instead of applying it to the energy crisis or some other thing that he could apply that mind to, he's applying it to film, and I think that's awesome.
Which I think is really entertaining, because he's the exact opposite of Lucas, but with the same result, where Lucas just wanted to make his movies.
Yeah.
But in order to make his movies, he had to like completely redo the entire film industry on his own, with ILM and like all of these different advancements that came as a result of things like Star Wars. And for him, it wasn't about the technology at all. Yeah. It was just a means to an end to make the movie he wanted to make.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how that kind of a thing happens, and how different perspectives can lead to similar conclusions.
Yeah, I think it'll be cool to see where it goes in the future. I think, the ability to have longer IMAX films, because I know this, I think the Odyssey is coming out at 252. The Oppenheimer was like 258. I don't remember what Oppenheimer was, but it was also, so it'll be interesting to see, like, when filmmakers can go longer, will they? I'm sure the answer is yes.
Well, what makes me curious, because I think it's a good point that they're going to beef up IMAX projection to be longer than 3 hours. However, if not the Odyssey, what movie would they do that for?
Probably Nolan's next.
Well, depending on how well the Odyssey does.
That's the thing, though, is that, like, I think that, because he said he's both after Oppenheimer and after and now during this one, he's floated a horror movie in his future. So
a horror movie on IMAX?
That'd be kind of awesome. I don't know what type of horror Nolan would do. But it's because I think they're going to be horror type with some of the monsters in this, and there was the scene in Oppenheimer where he has the vision of the people in the gym are
that
is kind of horror-y.
Just the pure anxiety scene.
Yeah. So I think he's like he's kind of playing with the stuff that would go into a Nolan horror movie. But yeah, if this does really well and they keep writing his checks, I could see that like he's like, all right, well okay, well this movie needs to be 315 or whatever. All right, hey, can you make one of these? And the other thing that'll be cool too about all of this IMAX stuff, even like I said, you could look at it the cynical, like these are all just marketing stunts. But what will be really cool is that hopefully the success of those marketing stunts will lead to them putting IMAX projectors in more places.
That would be nice because there's not enough of them.
Yeah, there are more now than there were when Oppenheimer came out. Like I don't think Oppenheimer you could do 70 mil at King of Prussia.
Really?
I don't remember. Because I remember.
Oh, it was a digital IMAX.
Yes, I think now is. I don't know. I don't remember with Sinners what it was, but now we are going to see it in 70 millimeter. Yeah, I think with Sinners there were something like 9 theaters in the U.S. that were playing it in. That's why I went to New York City to see it, so I could see it on 70 mil. But hopefully now, if this this PR stuff around IMAX expands and keeps being successful, it'll be more accessible, which is always cool. So yeah, I'm optimistic. I have not, since I started pursuing film, I've not always been optimistic about the future of the industry, but right now I am. Ask me tomorrow, I might have a different answer.
I was gonna say we could do an entire episode just on the trajectory of the industry as a business and where we are right now and where we think it's going. Because I have interesting takes on that, but that's for another time.
It is. So, we hope you enjoyed this. This was a little bit more all over the place than this show will generally be. We kind of have like a scheme of like each episode is either a movie or a double feature, or it's like a type of movies that we want to do. One that's like Bond movies that will hopefully be more focused. We'll do deeper dives than you get in the monthly video essays on Silver Attention main channel. And this was kind of just figuring out the format and us also not being able to do a Lore Lads today because our schedule got screwed up. So if you liked this, please subscribe, turn on notifications, check out the main channel where we do video essays, deep dives on the production of different films, narrated by this guy, edited by this guy. And we hope you'll stick around. Next episode will be on Heat. We will be doing episodes on DC, on the Odyssey, obviously, when that comes out. Lots of films, some older, some newer. We'll try to mix it up, give you a nice variety.
Sweet. Awesome. See you later, y'all.